Hello again, everybody. It's Scott Casper, Takedown Wrestling. We continue our coverage of the sport, this time Greco-Roman. We go to Minneapolis, and Kiki Kelley, Christina Kiki Kelley is joining us, team leader for the 2013 U.S. Greco-Roman World Team. Kiki, welcome home.
Thank you so much.
You've been overseas. You've been in Iran.
Yeah, I should have said Moto Shekeram. I learned just enough Farsi to make quite an impact there. They ended up calling me a media darling in the Iranian press.
A media darling. What is that like?
Well, that was incredibly strange for an American because around here you need, to do things that most people don't want to do. And as a middle-aged mother, to be constantly photographed and on the nightly news was extremely strange.
Yes, you are so middle-aged, by the way. Good job on you identifying.
I am. I'm 43.
I know that is, excuse me, Christina, that is not middle-aged. You and I have become friends, so pardon me if I fall back into our how we identify each other there. Sorry about that. You accompanied James Ravenek, the president of USA Wrestling, and others, Bauman Bakhtiari, several other friends, family, etc., Iranians, some naturalized citizens of the U.S. or displaced citizens of Iran, throughout the country for competition there. But then you were asked to stay. Let's talk about how it all started. You decided to go over there dressed how?
So being from Minnesota, there's a pretty large Islamic population here. All my life, my mother is a Mayo doctor, and so we've always had visiting Iranian doctors over. And this time I checked with some friends who happen to be from Africa, and they told me that I should probably err on the side of being very conservative. So I wore the full hijab, black, just all the way covering the entire body, and so they didn't recognize me at the airport. It took a little while for them to recognize me. And when Coach Ahad, who's actually originally from Iran, saw me, I've never heard him laugh so hard. He just couldn't believe. He didn't even recognize me as an American woman. And for whatever reason, that made a big impact. The next day, after the guys were doing the weigh-ins, I was at the House of Wrestling, which I didn't even realize I was the first woman to enter there. They had a seat at the table for me during the big FILA meetings, and we had the UN translator earphones and everything. And apparently, because they kind of forgot that I was there and forgot I was a woman, the Iranian Student News Organization decided to interview me and ask me why I was there and why I was wearing what I was wearing. And so simply put, I just said I wanted to show respect. There are many Islamic peoples in Minnesota, and that ended up going to the Iranian government. They sent out a press release saying, American team leader, modest woman, will be the first woman in the sports complex tomorrow for the World Cup in Tehran. And that, in addition to having the Grecos there for the first time since I think the 70s, spurred a lot of excitement, so much so that gates were broken down and people were crawling into windows to get in. So there were between 6,000 plus men in this auditorium. And when President Ravenek and I arrived, we were supposed to go in a separate car from the team. The team was treated like rock stars, and they came off their bus. But Jim and I pulled up, and we were surrounded by 4 Iranian police cars and escorted through a military line. They were very careful of our safety, and I just thought, what the heck did I get myself into? What is this all about? And got up there into the VIP section and just decided I was going to do my job, got my start sheets, just started watching the wrestling. Everyone forgot about me, and because of that, they decided, I think, to invite me later that day to be part of the opening ceremony, which means going down and holding the U.S. flag and representing, or the placard, and representing the USA as the first woman in that auditorium down on the mat. And I almost had a heart attack, but I just smiled the whole time, and there were pictures being taken. I didn't even look up until about 2/3 away around the stadium because I thought people could be throwing things at me, booing and spitting. I mean, it would not have surprised me, but what really surprised me is that they actually stood up and cheered and later called my name. That was incredible.
So, I mean, you were the first woman since 1979 allowed to attend a sporting event. So, some question as to whether or not they were going to allow you. You still went over on behalf of Team USA, your team, your Greco-Roman World Cup competitors, and a very unique opportunity indeed befell you, Team USA, and dare I say the world. And here's why. Because wrestling again has broken down yet one more barrier. Not only was the event something you were asked to participate in, you toured the country in a variety of ways. You were asked to stay an extended stay of some 5 or 6 days to further tour the country and have a growing impact. Was that a difficult decision for you, knowing that you were going to remain in country on behalf of the United States?
Let me tell you, my parents were a little bit unnerved, and President Ravanac stayed an extra day to make sure that the plans were firm and that everyone was really serious. It's not every day that the Iranian government invites you to stay as a goodwill ambassador, but I was treated like a diplomat. In fact, I visited Parliament. I met with women parliamentarians. I went to an orphanage. I went to a girls' school. I was invited to the Minister of Sports home for dinner. It was the most incredible trip. I'm so glad I just decided to swallow my fear and say yes. And I'm glad that the Americans had faith in me, that I could stand there on my own and represent them. And I'm also proud of the Iranians for, they broke a lot of barriers too, and I'm sure there were some behind the scenes tussles, first of all about a woman representing a country and being allowed into the sports arena, and then being on the news pretty much every night and in every paper, being interviewed, because I could have said anything and I could have dressed in any particular way. But because I'm an American and I have that right, but I chose to be respectful of the country, and apparently that just opens tons of doors there. They're the kindest people I've ever met in the world.
And that's, I suppose, what they're trying to put forward. And as far as competition goes, you got great seats, first of all, able to interact as you were, but you showed respect to, or deference anyway, to their economy, to their people, to their sports, and really tried to, I think, in many ways, from the pictures and video I've seen, immerse yourself in their culture. I thought that was perhaps the most generous. I've had observations from a variety of people who were there with you, talking about the experience and how very unique it was. Talk about, if you will, where this takes you in your mind, knowing that this is really a threshold. While you hadn't planned to cross it, you crossed it and did so with great aplomb.
Well, first of all, I was very aware of the many, many women who would love to be in those sports arenas and most likely will. I think everything will happen in Iran incrementally, in small steps, but there were already agreements signed and major advances made even by the time the American team left. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes, and I was very cognizant of being lucky enough to represent the first woman, but surely I won't be the last. In fact, once, the very next day, actually the first day I was in the auditorium, the very next day, a woman who probably should have been the first woman in the auditorium, who actually helped to run the entire show, was allowed in. And I took a picture with her, and we both did the peace sign. So because I was there that first day, she was allowed the second day. And who knows, little by little we'll have more and more women entering these auditoriums, and it's through Greco-Roman wrestling. You've probably heard about the controversy with volleyball.
Right.
So we were able to do something through Greco-Roman wrestling that, their country is not allowing in any other sport. And that showed a lot of trust, and a lot of us were flying by the seat of our pants and just kind of going with the flow. But these were some brave Iranians as well to allow me to be as public a figure as I was there.
What did, at the end of the day, what did wrestling take away from this? Understanding Greco-Roman Team USA is going through a state of evolution. We have a new coach in Matt Lindland. Our team, our direction, everything is changing. Some of the changes are going to be subtle, others not so subtle. But what did you take away from this experience?
Well, first of all, the very first day of competition was absolutely horrendous. Every Greco wrestler and coach will attest to that. We had a horrible, horrible time. Iran and Russia particularly immediately found out our weaknesses, and it was one embarrassing match after the next. So I was incredibly proud of the guys, because within 24 hours we became the Cinderella story. The Iranians were so impressed with us the second day because we did not make the same mistakes, and they started to cheer for us. So to hear the Iranians actually standing and cheering and drumming and chanting USA, USA, and they actually yelled Robbie's name in particular, and they called my name a couple times, so I had to stand up. Because of that energy and because of their faith in us and because we were the underdog story, and that's a great place.
And was Robbie wearing his trademark socks?
Yes, he was. Yes. He was absolutely the homecoming king of the entire stadium. They absolutely loved Robbie. And there were so many firsts. I actually felt sorry for I think it was a Turkish guy and a Hungarian guy who were wrestling over on the side. They were completely ignored because Robbie's match, I mean, they had the drummer come down and run with him through the auditorium with the Iranian flag. They just went crazy over him. It was such a love fest between Iran and America. I know that's almost impossible to believe based on our politics, but symbolically speaking, they put their flag next to ours at the very beginning. So I think that they were ready and prepared that through sports diplomacy, maybe things could get done that may not get done any other way. They were very open to us.
Isn't that the design of it all, though, Kiki? I mean, you take a look at the Olympic Games were designed to bridge political divides and to create a greater world together through the world of sport, through the world of competition. So isn't perhaps wrestling, again, continuing to lead the way in breaking down some of the things we think of being as normal?
Absolutely. I mean, the fact that some of our original women wrestling goddesses, for a better term, because I think they're goddesses, they're absolutely in my pantheon, come from Iran. They were not able to wrestle in their own country. They came here where there's a land of opportunity and were able to start wrestling and start up our program. And our women are still struggling to get the funds, the resources, the crowds, that our guys have. But wrestling is king in Iran, regardless of the recent news that soccer has superseded it. It's not true. Football has not superseded it. Wrestling is absolutely king in Iran. And it became very apparent to me, people were very, very aware of their long history as Persia and ancient Persia, and they referenced themselves as Persians. And they wanted me to know that, women did have a very high place in society at one time.
Finding a place for growth in this world of both economically challenged sports opportunities, yet we find it in wrestling, and there's got to be it's got to recharge your batteries to an extent.
Our whole team agreed that it was probably the best trip that we had taken. It's just too bad we couldn't bring everyone. Right. Those who obviously are involved in our military weren't allowed to go, but those who were there said it was by far the best experience they'd ever had traveling abroad.
Kiki, if there are people out there that are wanting to be involved, perhaps wanting to take that step, what advice would you give them about being involved in wrestling?
So are we talking about, can you clarify that actually?
Being involved as a volunteer, being involved even as a wrestler or even as a parent of a potential wrestler. And those, a lot of times we see those youngsters out there that they may be playing soccer or whatever, haven't tried wrestling, but you may be in a conversation with a parent. What advice do you give them?
Well, as a new parent of a wrestler myself, my little girl is 9 and she just took up wrestling this past season. Um, it's just one of those sports that may not seem as I don't know, quote unquote sexy from the outside until you learn the rules, and the rules are easier now to understand. But once you're hooked, you're hooked. And what can I say about wrestling? For me, wrestling brings out the best in people. I mean, it's wrestlers are the smartest athletes as far as I'm concerned. They are in the best shape. They are grappling individually, yet they represent a team and a country. It's just got everything. It can be the most exciting sport. If you had been in that auditorium in Tehran with us, you would see how exciting when the fans are really there and know the sport, how exciting it can be.
It's always good to talk to you, Kiki. What's next for you?
Well, Uzbekistan is on the table next. Not sure what to expect there. That's in September. In the meantime, there might be some chances for other big tournaments. I try to get to the youth tournaments as much as possible. Absolutely love keeping up with the ladies. I'm trying to get more involved with the ladies team. They are just fantastic.
Yes, they are.
Getting to know pretty much all of the folks who make USA Wrestling work, and that's on a state by state level. There are just so many hard-working folks like Brent Harvey, for example, who just work their tails off and give and give and give so that we can, take these little kids and make them into these Olympians.
It's going to be good having you on our radio show on Saturday. We'll go through some of this again, but I can't thank Dr. Bahman Bakhtiari enough for encouraging us to get back together again and really, laying out the idea of what you went through over there with President Ravanak and so many others as part of the Greco-Roman World Cup competition and being our U.S. team leader. I can think of no better place for you to take that great big step that you took in the country of Iran, one of the great competitors for Team USA and many others around the world. Kiki, thanks for the time today. Best to your family. I'm sure your mom and dad are happy to have you back in the States, yeah?
Now they're excited to go. Actually, the Iranians have been contacting me via Facebook, and I've already gotten packages, and they're saying, when are you coming back? And my family is invited, so who knows? Maybe I'll be heading back just even this year. Or just a visit.
Maybe you'll need a summer home over there or something like that. Or a winter home, perhaps. Something smaller, but, it's something nice to go to. Anyway, always good to talk to you, Kiki. Thank you so much for the dedication. Your volunteer spirit is shining very brightly, and we're a much stronger team. The Greco-Roman team is much stronger for having you as its team leader. So thank you so much for all of that, and I look forward to furthering our conversations.
Motoshekeram.
She nailed it with with an Iranian comment there. That's actually
that was thank you in Farsi, but I'm going to learn. That'll come in handy in Uzbekistan as well. But thank you, merci.
Merci.